Jalen Carter didn't get 2 steps past Westview High's rusted gates before Chase Wheeler blocked his path, a smirk twisting his lips. The air bit cold that Tuesday morning, October settling over the Colorado suburbs like a thin sheet of frost, leaves crunching under Jalen's scuffed sneakers with every cautious step. His hoodie gray, faded, a thrift store relic hung loose over his wiry frame, and his backpack sagged on one shoulder, straps frayed at the edges. Had barely taken in the sprawl of brick buildings or the flood of kids spilling toward the entrance when Chase's voice sliced through the dawn. "Yo, rookie, you lost your way to the shelter or what?" Jalen froze, eyes flicking up to meet Chase's 6'2", broad shoulders, blonde buzz cut, glinting under the pale sun. The guy stood there, varsity jacket slung over his frame like a king's cape, hands in his pockets, radiating the kind of confidence that begged for a reaction. 2 shadows flanked him, Dylan, a wiry kid with a mouth too big for his body, and Matt, a hulking slab of muscle who looked like he'd been born to follow. Heads turned in the courtyard, girls in cropped jackets pausing mid-giggle, guys in fresh Nikes glancing over their football tosses. A few snickered, low and sharp. Jalen didn't flinch. He shifted his weight, stepped to the side, and kept moving, his gaze sweeping the crowd like he was mapping a chessboard. "First move's yours, big guy," he thought, the words silent but sharp in his head. He'd seen this before. Oakland streets, corner crews, loudmouths fishing for a fight. Chase's laugh chased him, deep and cutting. "Walk away now, punk, but you can't hide forever." The taunt bounced off the brick walls, a gauntlet thrown to the wind. Dylan cackled, high and grating. Matt cracked his knuckles, a dumb grin spreading across his face like he'd rehearsed it. Jalen didn't turn back. He pushed through the double doors, the clang of metal swallowing Chase's voice, and slipped into the hallway. The air inside smelled like bleach and old gym socks, a stale tang that clung to the chipped navy lockers lining the walls. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the tiled floor. He paused by the front office, fishing a crumpled schedule from his pocket at Algebra 2, room 204, and folded it back with a flick of his wrist. Day 1, he thought. Keep it tight. He started down the corridor, weaving through the swarm of body skids, shouting, scrolling phones, slamming lockers his steps measured, shoulders loose. Westview was a machine. Football ruled, cliques carved out territory. Status was currency. Jalen didn't fit, and he knew it the second he crossed the threshold. His clothes didn't scream money thrift store jacket, worn Jordans with thinning soles, and his stride didn't beg for attention. He was a ghost slipping through the noise, and he liked it that way. Attention got you noticed back home, and notice got you jumped. His sister Maya had taught him that, her voice steady between rounds on the heavy bag. Move invisible, Jay, let him underestimate you. She was 5 years older, a kickboxer who'd fought her way out of their old neighborhood, now working security in Vegas, chasing something better. Nights in their cramped Oakland apartment, Shed drilled him hooks, blocks, footwork, her hands taping his wrists as she spoke. Don't swing unless the fight finds you, but when it does, make it count. He could still feel the sting of her jabs, the rhythm of her lessons. He wasn't here to prove anything to Westview. He was here to finish high school, get out, build something. That was the plan. Chase didn't care about plans. First period was a slow grind. Jalen found room 204, slipped into a desk near the back, and kept his head low. The teacher, a wiry guy with glasses and a tie too short for his frame dome, droned through equations, chalk squeaking on the board. A girl in the corner chewed gum loud enough to cut through the monotony, popping bubbles like tiny gunshots. A guy 2 rows up scrolled TikTok under his desk, screen flashing. Jalen had pulled out a notebook, pages creased, edges torn, and started copying the problems, his pen moving steady. No one spoke to him. No one had to. The quiet suited him. He caught the glances, though. A girl in a pink beanie whispered something to her friend as he'd walked in, her eyes darting to his sneakers. A guy in a Broncos jersey smirked at his hoodie like it was a punchline. Jalen didn't react, just kept his focus on the numbers. They're sizing me up, he thought. Fine. Let him look. Maya's voice echoed. They'll test you, Jay. Don't give him the first punch. He wasn't scared, he was ready. Lunch hit like a spotlight. He grabbed a tray from the cafeteria line PB&J, an apple, a carton of milk, and scanned the room. Tables were claimed, jocks by the windows flexing their varsity cred, theater kids near the stage chattering over scripts, a mix of loudmouths and loners scattered in between. Jalen picked a spot in the back, a small table with a wobbly leg, and sat alone. He unwrapped a sandwich, took a bite, and chewed slow, eyes drifting over the crowd, watching, listening, mapping. Chase's laugh broke the rhythm, deep, sharp, slicing through the hum of chatter. Jalen didn't look up, but he felt the shift heads turning, conversations dipping. Chase loomed a few feet away, arms crossed, Dylan and Matt hovering like vultures on a wire. The varsity jacket gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a badge of everything Jalen wasn't. Yo, what's that? Chase said loud enough for the nearby tables to catch it. He nodded at Jalen's tray. You packed that from the food bank? Or what? Dylan jumped in, grinning like a hyena. Nah, man, that's straight out of the trash. Smells like it, too. A few kids laughed, not all, but enough to sting. Jalen kept eating, eyes on his sandwich. The bread was dry, peanut butter sticking to his throat, but he didn't flinch. Starve it, Maya's voice whispered. He could feel Chase's stare, hot and heavy, waiting for a crack. Jalen didn't give him one. He took another bite, slow and deliberate, like the taunts were static. Chase stepped closer, voice dropping low, edged with venom. You mute or just stupid, newbie? Jalen swallowed, set the sandwich down, and finally looked up. His eyes locked on Chase's, not angry, not scared, just cold as steel. I'm eating, he said, voice flat but carrying a weight. You got a problem with that? The room shifted again. A couple kids leaned in, sensing a spark. Chase blinked, caught off guard, then forced a laugh-a-bark that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, he talks. Thought you were just gonna sit there like a broke-ass statue. Dylan leaned over the table, too close, breath sour. You hear me, man? Or you deaf too? Jalen held his gaze for a beat, long enough to make Dylan twitch, then grabbed his milk, popped the carton open, and stood. I'm done, he said, brushing past them. No shove, no scene, just a clean exit. He dumped his tray in the bin and headed for the door, the weight of their stares burning into his back. Round one, he thought. They're still swinging. It didn't stop there. By third period, the whispers had started. Jalen felt them in the hall's eyes, flicking his way, voices dropping as he passed. In English, someone accidentally knocked his books off his desk while the teacher scribbled on the board. Pages scattered, a pencil rolled under a chair. Jalen crouched, picked them up one by one, his jaw tight. No one owned up to it. No one had to. He knew the GAM test, the new kid. See if he breaks. After school, he reached his locker third row, near the gym, and stopped cold. Someone had scrawled trash across it in black Sharpie, the letters jagged and uneven. He stared at it, fingers curling into a fist, then pulled a napkin from his bag and scrubbed. The ink smeared, faded, but didn't vanish. He scrubbed harder, the paper tearing under his grip, until a janitor rounded the corner with a mop and he stepped back, hands falling to his sides. They're marking me, he thought. Fine. We'll mark 'em back when it counts. He didn't wait for the late bus. He took the long way home, cutting through a strip mall where the neon flickered, and an alley lined with overflowing dumpsters reeked of rot. The wind kicked up, tugging at his hood, and he shoved his hands in his pockets, replaying the day. Chase's laugh, Dylan's sneer. The word trash burned into metal. Maya's voice cut through. Don't let it lead you, Jay. You lead it. He kicked a pebble, watched it skitter across the pavement, and kept walking. Home was a duplex on the edge of town, paint peeling off the siding, a chain-link fence sagging in the yard. His mom was still at the hospital night shift again, so the place was dark when he pushed the door open. He dropped his bag by the couch, flipped on a lamp, and sank into the cushions. The quiet was heavy, but it was his. He closed his eyes, letting the day bleed out of him, and pictured the heavy bag in the backyard. Later, he decided. For now, he just breathed. Jalen's phone buzzed him awake before the sun broke the horizon, cutting through the duplex pre-dawn stillness. His mom's shoes were gone from the entryway. She'd slipped out after her shift, and the place felt like a shell. The fridges hummed the only heartbeat. He rolled off the couch, stretched until his joints popped, and grabbed his bag. Day 2 at Westview. Chase's taunt from yesterday. "You can't hide forever" looped in his head like a stuck track. Guys like that didn't back off. They dug in. The air outside was sharper, a gray sky promising rain as Jalen tugged his hoodie up, earbuds dangling loose around his neck. He took the alley shortcut, the stench of wet trash curling into his nose, but it shaved 10 minutes off the trek. His steps stayed steady, eyes flicking to the shadow-sold habits from Oakland, where you didn't trust a corner until you cleared it. Halfway through, he caught a flicker of figure ducking behind a dumpster, too quick to ID. Chase's crew, he thought, fists clenching in his pockets. He didn't slow down, but his pulse ticked up. By the time he hit Westview's gates, the first bell was ringing, a shrill echo off the brick, and the courtyard swarmed with kids shrugging off the cold. The halls were a rerun, loud, crowded, indifferent. Jalen wove through, head down, until he reached his locker. The trash scrawl was fainter now, scrubbed to a smudge, but it still glared at him. He popped the lock, swapped books, and slammed it shut with a clang that turned a few heads. A scrawny freshman with a mop of brown hair, Ethan, he'd learn later, flinched nearby, then darted off, nervous eyes lingering. Jalen clocked him, quick feet, something curious in his stare. File that away, he thought. Classes dragged. Algebra was equations he'd cracked years ago. English was a lecture on To Kill a Mockingbird he half heard. He kept his notebook open, pen moving, but his mind was on Chase the smirk, the jacket, the way he leaned into Jalen's space like he owned it. He's fishing, Jalen thought. Wants a bite, won't get it yet. He wasn't scared, he was tired. Tired of the script, new kid, easy mark, push until he snaps. He'd survived it before, but this time he wanted more than survival. Lunch rolled in and Jalen braced himself. Same tray, PB&J, apple, milk, same wobbly table in the back. He sat, unwrapped his sandwich, and took a bite, chewing slow, eyes sweeping the room. The cafeteria buzzed a hive of noise, trays clattering, voices overlapping, until Chase's laugh cut through like a blade. "Back for round 2, huh?" The voice was closer this time, laced with venom. Jalen didn't look up, but he felt the shift heads turning, chatter dipping. Chase loomed at the table's edge, arms crossed, Dylan and Matt in tow, a trio of trouble radiating too much swagger. The varsity jacket gleamed under the lights, a crown Jalen didn't bow to. "What's the deal, man? You eat like you're rationing for the end of the world." Jalen kept chewing, eyes on his tray. Maya's voice whispered, "Starve it, Jay. Don't feed the fire." He swallowed, reached for his apple, and bit down crisp, loud, deliberate. Dylan leaned in, smirking. "Yo, he's ignoring you, Chase. You letting that slide?" Chase's grin tightened, eyes narrowing. "Nah, he's just slow." "Right, newbie? Brain still catching up?" Jalen set the apple down, wiped his hands on his jeans, and finally looked up. His gaze locked on Chase steady, unblinking, cold as steel. "I catch up fine," he said, voice low but cutting. "You got something worth hearing? Say it." "I'm all ears." The air thickened. A few kids leaned in, sensing blood. Chase blinked, then barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, he's got a mouth now." "What's next? Begging for mommy?" Jalen tilted his head, just a fraction. "If I did, she'd still hit harder than you talk." The words slipped out, dry and precise. A jab he didn't pull back. Dylan snorted. Matt grunted a laugh. Chase's face flushed, red creeping up his neck. "You think you're funny?" he snapped, stepping closer, voice dropping low. "Keep talking, punk. See where it lands you." Jalen held his ground, eyes never wavering. "I see plenty from here," he said, calm as stone. "You done wasting my lunch?" Chase opened his mouth, but a teacher's shout-wheeler, "Sit down," cracked from across the room, snapping the tension. Chase shot Jalen a glare, muttered, "This ain't over," and turned away, his crew trailing like dogs on a leash. Jalen watched them go, then picked up his apple and took another bite. The cafeteria hummed back to life, but the thread stayed taut. Chase wasn't done swinging. It didn't stop there. By afternoon, the whispers had teeth. In the hall, someone tripped and sent Jalen's book sprawling again, this time in a crowded stretch near the gym. He knelt to grab them, fingers brushing the cold tile, and caught Dylan's smirk from 10 feet away, half hidden in the swarm. Tagged you, Jalen thought, stacking the pages. In history, a note landed on his desk charity case in block letters. He crumpled it, shoved it in his pocket, and kept his face blank. After school, he found gum jammed in his locker's vent, sticky, fresh, a petty little jab. He scraped it off with a pencil, jaw clenched, and didn't bother looking for the culprit. He knew. Chase wasn't subtle. Every move screamed his name. Jalen felt the pressure building, a slow burn he couldn't dodge forever. Maya's voice cut through. You're there to graduate, Jay, not to fight. But if they corner you, don't let them walk over you. He didn't want a corner, he wanted out. But Chase was drawing the lines, and Jalen wasn't blind. Friday hit like a storm rolling in. Gym class was last period, the locker room thick with sweat and bravado. Coach Ramirez, a stocky guy with a whistle and a permanent scowl, barked out drills. Dodgeball today? Pair up. The room shuffled, kids picking partners, until Ramirez pointed a stubby finger. Wheeler, you're with Carter. Chase grinned, a flash of teeth that promised trouble. Jalen didn't react, just grabbed the ball and stepped onto the court. The whistle blew, and Chase didn't wait. He hurled the ball like a cannon shot, aiming for Jalen's chest. It hit hard, thwack it showing off the bleachers. Jalen caught it one-handed, the sting buzzing up his arm. He didn't blink. He bounced it once, twice, then fired it back sharp, straight, a dart to Chase's sternum. The thud rang out, and a few kids gasped. Dang, someone muttered. Dylan snickered from the sidelines. Chase blinked, caught off guard, then forced a tight smile. Nice arm, charity case. Practice that in the gutter? Jalen bounced the ball again, eyes locked on Chase. We passing or talking, he said, voice flat, but the edge was there a dare. Chase's grin faltered, but he caught the next toss, faked a casual stance, and snapped it back harder. Aiming high, Jalen ducked, caught it midair, and lobbed it back with a spin that clipped Chase's shoulder. The crowd hushed, then erupted, half cheers, half laughs. Chase's face darkened, but Ramirez blew the whistle. Next pair! Jalen walked off, ball under his arm, feeling Chase's glare like a knife in his spine. Round 2, he thought. Your move. He'd won that one, clean quiet. But the game wasn't over. After school, the lot was a ghost town. Buses gone. Most kids cleared out. Jalen cut through toward the bleachers, earbuds in, Kendrick Lamar's bass thumping low. He needed air, a break from the week's wait. Footsteps crunched behind him too close, too heavy. He slowed, pulled an earbud out, and turned. Chase stood 10 feet back. Dylan and Matt fanned out like wings. The varsity jacket gleamed in the fading light, but Chase's hands weren't in his pockets this time. One gripped a small switchblade, the kind you'd hide in a sock. He flicked it open, click, the sound sharp in the stillness, and smirked. Thought you were untouchable, huh? Jalen's pulse kicked up, but his face stayed stone. He dropped his bag, squared his shoulders, and stepped back. Walk away, man, he said, voice low, steady. You don't want this. Dylan laughed, high and sharp. What's he gonna do, cry? Matt cracked his knuckles, edging closer. Let's see how tough he is. Chase twirled the blade, eyes glinting. You act like you're better than us sitting alone, staring like you run this place. I want to know what makes you tick, newbie, so let's play. Maya's voice rang clear. Strike only when it finds you. It found him. Jalen locked eyes with Chase. You're holding that knife like it's your first time, he said, slow and cold. Sure you know how to use it? Chase's smirk twitched, but he stepped forward. Prove it, tough guy. Dylan moved first, rushed in with a wild swing. All noise, no aim. Jalen sidestepped, hooked Dylan's arm, and twisted hard. Dylan hit the gravel face first, a yelp cut short by dirt. Matt charged, arms wide like a linebacker. Jalen ducked, planted a quick jab to Matt's gut short, sharp, folding him over, wheezing. Chase lunged, blade flashing high. Jalen locked, grabbed Chase's wrist mid-swing, and yanked the knife clattered free, skidding across the pavement. Jalen pivoted and drove a fist into Chase's jaw clean, spinning hook that snapped his head back. Chase stumbled, hit to the ground hard, blood trickling from his lip. It was over in seconds. Jalen stood there, breathing even, hands loose. Dylan groaned in the dirt. Matt clutched his stomach, gasping. Chase glared up, one hand braced on the gravel, the other wiping his mouth. A shadow shifted near the bleachers. Riley, Chop. Jalen didn't see her, choppy black hair and a camera in hand, frozen mid-step, lens up. Jalen didn't notice. He grabbed his bag, slung it over his shoulder and walked off, the crunch of his steps fading into the dusk. Chase didn't know it yet, but he'd just lost more than a fight. And Jalen? He'd just drawn a line. The weekend was a blur of restless nights. Jalen couldn't shake Friday, Chase's blade flashing, the thud of Dylan hitting gravel, the crack of his fist against jawbone. He'd walked away clean, no marks, but the weight stuck to him like damp fog. He sprawled on the couch, staring at the duplex cracked ceiling, the streetlight flickering through the blinds. His mom shuffled in around midnight, scrubs rumpled from a double shift, and stopped when she saw him awake. "You okay, Jay?" Her voice was soft, frayed at the edges. He sat up nodding. "Yeah, just thinking." She squinted, reading him like she always did. "You're too quiet. What's up?" "School stuff," he said, keeping it vague. "It's fine." She sighed, too tired to push. "Get some sleep. You're not carrying the world for me." She disappeared into her room, door clicking, shut. Jalen didn't tell her about the knife, the fight, didn't want her pulling extra shifts to fix his mess. He grabbed his phone, scrolled through nothing, then tossed it aside. Sleep didn't come easy. Monday slammed in like a fist. Jalen stepped through Westview's gates, and the air shifted thick, electric, heavy with eyes. Kids parted as he walked, not respect but something sharper wariness, maybe dread. Whispers trailed him like a shadow. "That's him." He jumped Chase. Dude's nuts. He kept his hoodie up, head low, but he felt every glance, every hushed word. His locker was clean, now no gum, no Sharpie, but the echo of trash lingered in his peripheral. First period algebra was a gauntlet. The vape kid who sat behind him grabbed his stuff and bolted 3 rows up, chair scraping loud. Jalen didn't flinch, just opened his notebook and copied equations, pen steady. The teacher droned on, oblivious, but the room crackled with stolen looks. He caught scraps, dropped 3 guys, Chase's lips toast. His grip tightened, ink bleeding into the page. They're rewriting it already, he thought. Fine, let him try. Mid-class, a hall monitor tapped his shoulder, voice curt. "Carter, principal wants you. Now." Heads turned as Jalen stood, bag slung over his shoulder, and followed her out. The office was stark wood paneling, a desk piled with papers. Ortiz sat there, eyes cold, tie crisp. "Sit," he said, pointing. Jalen did, face blank. "Heard about Friday," Ortiz started, leaning forward. "Videos circulating. You in a fight?" "They came at me," Jalen said, voice level. 3-on-1, knife involved. I handled it. Ortiz's brow furrowed. "Knife? No one's saying that." "Check the pavement by the bleachers," Jalen shot back. "Dry. Might still be there." Ortiz leaned back, scribbling something. "We don't tolerate violence, Carter. Doesn't matter who started it." Jalen tilted his head. "Tolerate knives, though." Ortiz's pen paused, then he waved him off. "Back to class. We're looking into it." Jalen stood, walked out, the door thudding shut behind him. Looking into it, he thought. Sure, lunch was a spotlight he couldn't dodge. He grabbed his tray, PB&J, apple, milk, and hit the back table. The cafeteria hummed, but when he sat, it went quiet, too quiet, like a held breath. He ate slow, eyes on his food, until Chase's voice boomed across the room, loud and theatrical. "Dude's psycho," Chase said, holding court at a crowded table. Varsity jacket on like armor. "Came at us like it's a damn movie. Kicked Dylan's legs out, Bruce Lee style. Nobody moves like that unless they've been in real fights." Dylan nodded, rubbing his shoulder. "Felt like he snapped it, man." Matt stayed silent, head down, but a blonde cheerleader raised an eyebrow. "You surrounded him, though, right?" Chase snapped. "Nah, we were just talking," he flipped out. "Total psycho. She frowned, unconvinced, but didn't push. Jalen chewed his apple, the crunch cutting through the noise. Liars loud when he's scared, he thought. He didn't care what they believed, he cared what they do. By afternoon, the video hit in seconds of grainy chaos on Instagram. Jalen dodging Dylan, dropping Matt, clocking Chase. No sound, no knife, just him moving fast and clean. Caption: Psycho newbie attacks. Westview weird. A burner account, but Chase's stench was all over it. Comments piled up. He's wild. Don't mess with him. Something's wrong with that dude. Jalen saw it on the bus home, thumb hovering over the screen. His chest tightened, not shame, but a slow, simmering burn. Had held back, could've broken Chase's wrist, didn't. Could've left Dylan limping, didn't. This was their spin. He dialed Maya, pacing the backyard as dusk bled into the sky. She answered, static crackling. What's up? Didn't start it, he said, voice tight. They had a knife. I finished it. Now I'm the villain. She paused, then, you won, Jay. They're yelling 'cause they're shook. Own it, don't let it own you. They're lying, he said, kicking dirt. Videos everywhere. Let 'em lie. Truth don't need a stage. You know who you are? Yeah, he muttered. Still sucks. Always does, she said. Keep your head up. You're there to build, not burn. He hung up, staring at the gray expanse above. Pride and frustration knotted in his gut. He'd won the fight clean, sharp. But this war? It was just heating up. Tuesday, the rumors grew fangs. In gym, Coach Ramirez didn't pair Jalen, just pointed him to shadow drills alone, grunting, stay out of trouble. Jalen moved through it, jabs, ducks, pivots, feeling the stares. Chase skipped, licking his wounds, but Dylan glared from the bleachers, arms stiff. Matt wouldn't meet his eyes. In the halls, someone muttered, gangbanger, as Jalen passed. By history it was. He got expelled before. Then, bet he's packing. All lies, but lies stuck here. Jalen kept moving, face blank, tallying every word in his head. After fourth period, Ethan lingered near Jalen's locker, kicking at the floor like he was working up to something. Jalen caught his eye, nodded. What's up, kid? Ethan hesitated, then, they're full of it. I saw him mess with you first week. You're not that. Jalen smirked, faint. Appreciate it. Don't get tangled in this, though. Ethan shrugged, a spark in his eyes. Just saying. He bolted as the bell rang. That night, Jalen hit the heavy bag in the backyard until his knuckles burned, sweat dripping into the dirt. They see a monster, he thought, jabbing hard. Good, I know what I'm not. The bag swung, thudding with every hit, drowning the noise in his skull. Wednesday lunch. Jalen sat at his usual spot, picking at his sandwich, when Riley slid into the seat across from him, choppy black hair. Glasses low, no smile. She leaned in, voice a whisper. Got the full video. Chase swung first with a knife. You didn't start it. Jalen froze, sandwich halfway to his mouth. He set it down, eyes narrowing. You filmed it? Yeah, she said, unflinched. Was there for an art thing, camera up. Caught it all. He studied her sharp jaw, steady gaze. Why now? This hearing crap's garbage, she said, jaw tight. They're pinning it on you, and I'm sick of Chase's lies. Didn't post it, hate the spotlight, but him done sitting. He leaned back, arms crossed. What's your angle? You don't know me. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. Justice, maybe, and payback. Chase is my cousin, ex-cousin. Family ditched me after my dad split. He's owed this for years. Jalen's brow lifted. So it's personal? Call it what you want, she said, voice like us. I've got proof. Told Ortiz, I'll testify if they push it. You in? He didn't answer right away, mind racing. The tape could flip it, knife and all. But Riley? She wasn't an ally, she was a blade with her own edge. Maya's voice cut through. Trust what you see. He saw steel in Riley, not charity. Why should I trust you, he said. Don't, she fired back. Trust the video. I'm not here to save you, I'm here to bury him. He nodded, slow. Show me. She pulled her phone, tapped it, and angled the screen. The footage rolled grainy but brutal. Dylan's swing, Matt's charge, Chase's knife flicking out. Jalen's moves dodging, disarming, striking pure defense. It ended with the blade skidding, Chase down. Truth in 10 seconds. Jalen exhaled, leaning back. That's it? That's it, she said, pocketing the phone. Hearings Friday. We'll be there. You? Yeah, he said, meeting her eyes. We'll be there. She stood, grabbed her tray, and walked off, no goodbye, just purpose. Jalen watched her go, the burn in his chest shifting hope, edged with caution. Chase had lit this fire. Riley might snuff it out. But Jalen? He was ready to fight either way. That night, Chase's burner account dropped a still Jalen mid-punch captioned, "He thinks he's in a movie. Scared yet?" Comments rolled. "Expel him. Dudes off, juvie vibes." Jalen read every one, jaw tight, then shut his phone off. The story wasn't his anymore. But Friday, he'd rewrite the ending. Thursday morning draped the duplex in a gray shroud, the sky heavy with unspoken weight. Jalen barely slept. Chase is blurry still, and the swarm of comments gnawed at him, a relentless buzz he couldn't mute. He dragged himself off the couch, grabbed his bag, and headed for the door. His mom caught him there, still in her scrubs, coffee mug steaming in her hand. "Jalen," she said, voice firm but worn, "what's going on? You've been a ghost all week." He paused, hand on the knob. "School crap. Hearing tomorrow will fix it." Her eyes narrowed, cutting through him. "Fix what? You're not telling me something." He met her gaze, steady. "Got into it with some kids. They're twisting it. I'm clearing it up." "A hearing?" She set the mug down, arms crossing. "You hurt?" "Nah," he said quick. "I'm good, just noise." She studied him, then nodded slow. "Call me if it goes south." "We'll be there, shift or no shift." "Got it," he said, slipping out before she could dig deeper. The walk to school stretched long, damp air clinging to his skin. He replayed Riley's video in his head, Chase's knife, his own hands moving fast. Truth on tape, but truth didn't always win out without a fight. Westview simmered with tension. Kids stared out right now. No whispers, just quick steps and sidelong glances. Jalen moved through it locker, class, lunch like a shadow they couldn't pin. At his back table, halfway through his apple, Ethan slid in across from him, eyes bright despite the nerves. "You're set for tomorrow, right?" Ethan said, voice low. "Heard about the hearing." Jalen chewed, swallowed, eyed him. "Yeah, you keeping tabs?" Ethan grinned, faint, kinda. "They're still talking crap. I don't buy it." Jalen tucked the freak note Ethan had given him into his pocket. "Good instincts," he said. "Stay out of the crossfire, though." Ethan shrugged. "Just watching. You're not what they think." Jalen nodded, a spark of respect flickering. "Keep that head sharp, kid." Ethan bolted when the bell rang, leaving Jalen with a faint smirk. A crack in the walls, Maul, but real. Friday's hearing hit like a reckoning. Jalen's mom couldn't get off, so he walked into the district office alone, hoodie swapped for a crisp button-up shed ironed. The room was cold white walls, long table, 3 figures in stiff chairs, Principal Ortiz, a board guy with a choking tie, and Miss Harper, pen-tapping a rhythm. Chase sat across, his Dada barrel-chested cop with a badge gleaming looming behind. Jalen took his seat, hands loose, eyes steady. Ortiz cleared his throat. "We're addressing last Friday's altercation. Reports say Jalen Carter engaged in aggression. Safety's our concern." Chase's dad leaned in, voice gravelly. "My son was attacked. Unprovoked." "Kids at danger checked the video." Jalen's jaw tightened, but he stayed cool. Ortiz nodded to Ms. Harper. "We've seen it. Concerning." "Jalen, they cornered me," Jalen said, voice even. 3-on-1. Chase pulled a knife. "I didn't start, I stopped it." Chase scoffed, lying through his teeth. "No knife, he jumped us." The board guy adjusted his glasses. "Video shows you down, Wheeler, no weapon." "'Cause he took it," Chase snapped. "He's quick trained or some crap." Jalen tilted his head. "Trained to not bleed out?" "Guess so." Ms. Harper frowned. "This isn't funny, Jalen." "Neither's a blade in my face," he fired back, calm but firm. "Check the full tape." The door creaked. Riley strode in, laptop under her arm, glasses slipping. She didn't wait, just slapped it on the table and hit play. "You want facts? Watch." The room froze as the video rolled, Dylan swinging, Matt charging, Chase flicking the knife out clear and cold. Jalen's moves dodging, disarming, striking were survival, not attack. The blade skidded, Chase crumpled. 10 seconds of raw clarity. Chase's dad coughed, face purpling. That's fake. Edited. Riley crossed her arms, voice like steel. It's not. I filmed it to Art Project. They trapped him. He warned them. They didn't back off. Ortiz blinked. Why hold this back, Ms. Foster? Riley Foster, she said. Didn't want to get sucked in. But Chase's my ex-cousin ditched me after family crap. Pushed me downstairs once, broke my arm. This is him losing, not Jalen starting. Chase lurched forward. You're full of it, Riley. This is some petty revenge. Sit, Ortiz barked. Chase sank back, seething. The board guy scribbled. You didn't report earlier? Riley shrugged, unflinched. Scared. Lousy excuse, but true. Silence stretched. Ortiz rubbed his temples. Well, review. Dismissed. Jalen stood, grabbed his bag, and walked out, Riley trailing. In the hall, he turned. Didn't expect that. Had to, she said, eyes hard. Not just for you, for me. He nodded slow. Still. Thanks. She waved it off, vanishing down the corridor. Jalen stepped outside, the air sharp against his skin. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. He felt it. Monday, the email dropped. Jalen Carter cleared. Evidence supports self-defense. His mom pinned it to the fridge, smirking. Told you. He grinned back, but the wind felt thin. Chase's shadow still loomed. School quieted, no taunts, no shoves. Chase was out, suspended, maybe more with his dad's pull crumbling. Dylan kept low. Matt switched on tables. Whisper softened. Has the one. Took Chase down. Jalen wasn't a hero, just a guy they sidestepped now. Wednesday after school, that changed. Jalen cut through the lot, earbuds in, when gravel crunched too deliberate. He turned, and Chase was there. 3 guys behind him, bigger, rougher, not Westview stock. Chase's lip was healed, but his eyes burned, a bigger knife glinting in his hand under the streetlights. Thought you skate free? Chase snarled, voice raw. You're done. Jalen dropped his bag, hands loose. You lost once, he said, cold. Sure you want to double down? The biggest guy swung fast, fists like bricks. Jalen rolled, gravel biting his knees, and popped up with a jab to the throat, short, sharp, dropping him choking. Another lunged. Jalen ducked, slammed a fist into his ribs, sent him staggering. Chase charged, knife slashing air. Jalen sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted. Chase headbutted him, splitting Jalen's lip. Blood stung, but Jalen kneed Chase's gut twice, hard, dropping him gasping. The knife clattered free. Hey! Ethan bolted from the shadow shed, been trailing since the hearing, watching. Help! Over here! His shout echoed as Coach Ramirez and a janitor sprinted up. Chase's crew dragged him off, wheezing, vanishing into the dusk. Ramirez glared. You good, Carter? Yeah, Jalen said, wiping his lip. Thanks, kid, he added, clapping Ethan's shoulder. Ethan grinned, shaky but proud, not scared this time. Smart play, Jalen said. You saved it. Next week, Ortiz cornered Jalen. Assembly tomorrow. Need a speaker. You in? Jalen hesitated. Me? You, Ortiz said. The real you. He nodded, and that night he scratched one line on a page. I didn't ask for this, but I'm still standing. The auditorium buzzed lights low, kids restless. Jalen took the mic, no notes, voice steady. Been called a lot, here quiet, weird, dangerous. Some of you still don't know me. Nervous laughs rippled. Didn't come to fight, came to finish school, live my day, like you. He paused, scanning them. I'm not perfect. I get mad, I bleed. But if you only know the lie someone sold, you don't know me. Where I'm from, keeping quiet keeps you breathing. Here. Silence just makes them louder. He nodded at the teachers. Some heard me, some didn't. I'm still here. You couldn't scare me off. The room stilled. Don't judge what you don't get, he finished. Ask instead of pushing. Might learn something. He stepped back, mic clicking off. Silence, then Ethan clapped front row, then another, rolling into a wave. Not wild, just real. Later, Ethan caught him in the courtyard. You trained for that? Jalen shrugged. Trained to stay ready. Teach me? He thought, then nodded. Not about hurting. You in? I don't want to be scared, Ethan said. Eyes steady. Jalen smiled. faint. First lesson, stand tall, even when it's easier to shrink. They walked off, dusk settling over the lot. That night, Jalen didn't feel whole, not yet. He slid the freak note under his pillow, crumpled but unbroken. A reminder that surviving isn't healing not all the way. Through the window, city lights flickered, and he wondered, I'm still here. What's next? The next day at Westview, a freshman faced down a bully, eyes steady, no flinch, a small shift, but enough to echo what Jalen started. Strength isn't loud, it stands firm. And sometimes the quiet ones cut deepest when you push too far. If Jalen's fight hits you where it counts, if it sparked something drop a like to back him and every underdog like him. Hit subscribe too, because we've got more stories coming, ones that punch hard and lift higher. Stick around, you won't want to miss what's next.